Hello. So in this video, we're going to talk about Peter George's film, Surf Nazis Must Die. And from that title, you can probably make a reasonably good assessment of the quality of this film. So it's an interesting movie, but it's not a good movie. This is a film from Troma Entertainment, and if you know anything about Troma, you have a sense of the quality. Troma is a company famous for low-budget, poorly written, gory violence, gratuitous nudity, etc., etc. They're an exploitation-type film house. Even by the standards of Troma, I think Surf Nazis Must Die is not a particularly good film. Basically, the storyline goes that there is an earthquake that, to a certain extent, destroys civilization. We'll come back to that because that's actually an important point. That's an issue that I have with the film. And in the wake of this earthquake, surf gangs take over at least the beach community in which this film is set. The most vicious and dominant of these gangs is a group of neo-Nazis led by a guy calling himself Adolf. His girlfriend is called Ava. His lieutenant and sort of engineer who builds them all their bladed weapons and stuff is named Mengele, etc., etc. So they're just, it's typical neo-Nazi bullshit. There's a number of other gangs, including like the Surf Samurai, the Pipeliners, these groups who do compete for power. There's a bit of a Warriors ripoff at some point in the storyline where Adolf calls all of the gangs together and is basically like, we run the beaches, the surf gangs can be much more powerful if we all band together under the swastika. The other gangs, much like in the Warriors, actually are not entirely thrilled with this idea. They seem to initially be like, yeah, okay, you're the toughest and most violent guys around. Sure. But then they all plot together against the Surf Nazis. So while that is happening, the Surf Nazis murder a I don't know what exactly his job is. He seems to be some kind of like supervisor at an oil well or something. And he attempted to prevent one of the little kid Surf Nazis, of whom there's a bunch, who don't really play much of a role beyond just sort of being there. But this little kid attempts to steal a woman's purse, and the guy, Leroy Washington, stops him. Adolf confronts him, and then when Leroy's basically like, hey man, fuck you, because you're a neo-Nazi, I don't give a shit about you. At which point the neo-Nazis kill him. Eleanor is Leroy's mom. She has been moved into a nursing home because her own home was damaged in the earthquake. And she basically is like, so she's pretty badass. She's actually kind of an interesting character, and I really wish they had done more to develop her. But like, in this nursing home, she's teaching these other retirees and whatnots to play poker and smoke cigars and all this stuff. And like, she doesn't take shit from anybody. So she's actually a really cool character. But she's devastated by the murder of her son, and She prays to God to help her figure out who did this. She eventually does hear Smeg, who's one of the surf Nazis, trying to recruit some women to, I don't know, join the gang or at least have sex with him or whatever it is. And he brags about them having murdered this African American, which is not the term that he uses. Yes, the film has racial epithets in it. It's about surf Nazis. You gotta fucking accept that surf Nazis suck. They're terrible people. They're racists. Fuck them. In the immortal words of the dead Kennedys, Nazi punks, fuck off. That's how I live my life. That's how you should live your life, etc., etc. Diatribe over. So, Eleanor happens to be walking along the boardwalk or whatever it is, and she overhears Smeg telling these women about how they murdered her son. So she grabs him and slams him up against some concrete, and basically the implication is that she beats information out of him. And so she finds out that the surf Nazis are responsible for killing her son. She then goes to a pawnbroker who kind of also works with the surf Nazis, and she buys a gun and she buys grenades. Then we cut back to the other gangs, the pipeliners, the surf samurai, and the designer surfers, something like that. The other group is in weird, I don't know, sort of pastel tie-dye, and they're always combing their hair and stuff. I don't know what their shtick is as a gang, but it's not very intimidating. So those three groups are all we've got to take out the surf Nazis. They're being more vicious than we've ever been before. We've got to do something about this. And so they agree to attack the surf Nazis all together. The surf samurai are the first ones to do this, but they get ambushed. They try and come up on Adolf and Ava while they're sleeping on the beach, but one of the other guys, Hook, is hiding in a trash can, and he pops out and kills one of them with a crossbow, it looked like, and then they Ava and Adolf and Hook all take out the other two surf samurai. Then they go find the designer guys, they kill them. The pipeliners watch their other two temporary allies get just absolutely wrecked, and they're we'll get them later. So the pipeliners attempt to ambush the Nazis at their headquarters. They do manage to squirt acid into one of the guys' face, after which Adolf actually kills himself, one of his own dudes, Brutus. But then they kill the pipeliners. There's not that much of a fight, even. So the surf Nazis are now, as far as the gangs are concerned, the undisputed victors of this war. But they're sleeping in their little bunker thing when grenades roll in, right up next to Hook's face. Boom! Hook gets just blown up. Mengele takes some shrapnel in the neck, and he ends up dying. So Adolf and Ava run off. They've heard the sound of a motorcycle, so they assume it's the bikers that they had been trying to control earlier, but they're now running off. They're actually chasing and they actually decide to chase the motorcycle as it rides away. As it turns out, it was Eleanor Washington. She rides her motorcycle back to the nursing home to go get her gun. Don't know why she didn't bring the gun with her in the first place. That's what I would have done, but hey, that's me. So she rides her motorcycle back to the nursing home to get the gun. Adolf and Ava end up at the nursing home, and they're going toward her, and she comes back out with the gun, and she's I'm going to murder you. And they're we're going to run away because we're fucking cowardly ass Nazi punks. So they run off. They steal Eleanor's motorcycle, take off. Eleanor steals their van and chases them in, and they run into this construction site, and Eleanor's hunting them down. And then they go they get out to the beach and they steal two dudes' surfboards and they just like take off swimming, doing the surfboard paddling thing. And Eleanor holds a gun to somebody and gets them to take her out in her speedboat. And they run Ava down and she's decapitated by the speedboat. And then they're going after Adolf and she shoots him in the water. After Adolf has thrown a knife and killed the dude driving the boat, so Eleanor takes over. She shoots him in the water, and then he gets up in the boat somehow, and he's trying to kill her, and she's like, put the gun in your mouth, boom, blow your head off. Now he's in the water, he's dead, and Eleanor is just like, yeah, I'm gonna have a cigar. I don't even give a fuck. So Eleanor wins. So, it's not a good movie. You can probably tell from that plot summary, there's a lot of stuff that kind of doesn't make that much sense, and there's a lot of gore, there's some pointless, not full nudity, but topless scenes, whatever it is. You know, again, it's Troma, that's what they do. This is their shtick. Even as a not very good exploitation type film, it's very slow. It's very undeveloped. There's a lot of extended scenes of people surfing, which, with an 83-minute runtime, it takes up a lot of time. And so the whole thing just moves very slowly. There's also a lot of time spent with people just sort of sitting around and not saying that much that's of significance. And so it doesn't feel, the pacing is not good. So that's one issue. I also think it's an extraordinarily flimsy storyline. Partially because there's just not that many people around here. So it's like, okay, then the neo-Nazis control the beach, but like, so what? Yeah, they get to surf, but there's also, like, there's a ton of beach, and there's like 18 people in the whole movie, and including all the extras. Like, everybody could have their own 5-mile section of beach, and it wouldn't make any real difference. So it's not entirely, the premise is not entirely plausible, but the real big problem with the premise for my reading, is the idea that this is some kind of post-apocalyptic civilization doesn't really make that much sense. The only thing that no longer seems to be functioning in this society is emergency services. Like, the idea is that this is post-apocalyptic. There was this massive earthquake, it basically destroyed infrastructure, etc., etc. Society has collapsed, gangs have taken over, but like, it doesn't make any sense that that's true. Because we see a lot of stuff up and running. There's oil wells, oil refineries, there's construction going, there's a pawnbroker who's still in business, there's at least one bar that's still in business, there's a nursing home that's still in business. Why would all this stuff still be up and functioning if this is some sort of post-apocalyptic wasteland? What there doesn't seem to be is any sort of police. Oh, also, Smeg comes from a fairly nice middle-class household, which seems completely unaffected by this devastating earthquake. But there doesn't seem to be any police. As far as we can tell, there's no real emergency services, although I think it's a brief scene, but I think Eleanor is brought to a coroner's office to identify Leroy's body. So there's some version of, like, paramedics or EMS or something like that. Somebody who can go and get a body, take it to the coroner's office for the official stuff. So it seems like the only social change that has actually really occurred due to this earthquake, the only two social changes are the police have just completely disappeared and Eleanor's house was destroyed. That's the extent of the post-apocalyptic, or of the apocalyptic destruction that has allowed surf Nazis to largely just take over this community. And as a premise, that just doesn't ring true for me.